Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton, and you're listening to me on That's Total Mom Sense. And my experience was fantastic.
Hi, I'm Gabby Bernstein.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Farnoosh Tarabi.
Hi, this is Chriselle Lynn, and you're listening to me on
That's
Total
Mom
Sense.
I want lipsticks for everyone. Even when I was making foundations.
We've been building these direct-to-consumer media brands, and I really thought there was a space for a more storytelling, premium-led video brand for women.
Started a beauty brand out of my apartment, and now to be a Black female founder at Unilever, there's been some incredible key learning.
Perception that motherhood softens you. Mm-hmm. It has softened me towards them.
Right.
But it has toughened me like nobody's business.
I believe parents have a superpower, our intuition. I call it our mom sense, and it applies to dads too. Hi, I'm Kanika. I love storytelling and a good interview. I began my career as a television anchor and executive producer for CNN. I am now an entrepreneur and podcaster. What am I most proud of? Being a mom of 3, including twins. Tune in wherever you listen to podcasts and on my website, kanikachadagupta.com, and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Stay strong and see you soon. I am so humbled to be having a one-on-one interview with my distinguished guest today. She's a thoughtful leader, author, educator, global public health advocate, and philanthropist who was blessed by destiny and has been fueled by her conviction to change our world for the better and motivate our kids to do the same. I'm honored to be joined by Chelsea Clinton. Chelsea Victoria Clinton was born in Little Rock, Arkansas as the daughter of Bill Clinton, the 42nd president of the U.S., who served from 1993 to 2001, and her mother, Hillary Clinton, U.S. Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, and formerly New York Senator. Her parents sent her to public school where she skipped 3rd grade, and at 12 years old, she entered the White House. She went on to study at Sidwell Friends, a private school in D.C., Stanford University, the University of Oxford, where her dad was a Rhodes Scholar in 1968, and Columbia, and has earned her bachelor's in history, master's in public health, and PhD in international relations. She's published several books. Her first was It's Your World, Get Informed, Get Inspired and Get Going, Governing Global Health, Who Runs the World and Why? The children's book series, She Persisted, with women who changed history in the world of politics, sports, the arts, and science. Start now. You can make a difference. Don't let them disappear. 12 endangered species around the world. And welcome to the Big Kids Club, what every older sibling needs to know. Along with her mom, Hillary, she co-authored Grandma's Gardens and the Book of Gutsy Women, Favorite Stories of Courage and Resilience, which has been adapted by Apple TV into a docuseries called Gutsy. Chelsea lives in New York with her husband, Mark, and their 3 kids.
It's so ideal to have you on because you're lifting up the next generation, helping us all build our legacy. So you are so fitting to be on the show, Chelsea.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a little backstory. I grew up in Maryland in DC, and I remember going with my mom and family members to the Easter egg roll. I remember going when, your father was in office, and I feel like just seeing that life that you were leading as first daughter parallel to our own lives was just so fascinating for us. We were all growing up alongside you. So this is going to be a 3-part conversation. It's dreams, service, and legacy. So I want to start with dreams. I'm quoting from your She Persisted series. Oprah said, "The biggest adventure you can ever take is to live the life of your dreams." And as a child, you lived most of your life in the White House, started at age 12 and were there till age 20. So what was it like for a young Chelsea, such an impressionable age, to be in the public eye and be in public service at such a young age?
Oh, goodness. Well, when I was very little, my dad was governor of Arkansas. And so certainly not in the public eye at a kind of national scale, although very much kind of in the public eye at a state and certainly a more local level. Yet I always understood why it was so important to my parents to be in public service, and that being in the public eye was certainly not the goal. And they did everything they could to protect me from being overly scrutinized. It was kind of the inevitable byproduct of their call to service. So you think about dreams, of their kind of dreams to serve and to try to improve, for my dad, as many lives as he could as governor and then as president, and certainly for my mom, a very clear focus on improving the lives of children and families. And so even as a teenager, that my mom didn't have an elected office in the same way my dad did. I always knew that she too was very deeply involved in service when she was a lawyer, kind of through the cases that she would take and her advocacy work, and then certainly as First Lady. And so for me, while I was aware, of course, that there kind of was always kind of the public gaze on us, I knew that that was an inevitable part of my parents' call, drive, dream of service. And I always understood that, thankfully, as a kid, through the different examples that my parents shared with me of kind of what they were working on or who they were working for, what they hoped to do. And I'm very thankful that they made those connections for me, as a very little girl, that those connections continued when I was less little, when we were in the White House.
In your interview with Conan, I love that you shared that, oftentimes there would be a state dinner with prime ministers and ambassadors present, and you would, go downstairs, say hello to guests, but couldn't wait to get back to your homework. So just to have that semblance of normalcy is really great to hear.
And my parents, thankfully, also wouldn't have had it any other way. I mean, even just the anecdote around like you being at the Easter egg roll, and I just never missed school. I mean, I missed school to be there for the signing of the peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Wow. And I missed a little bit of school to go with my parents to Russia because my grandmother had just died and they didn't want to leave me alone and they couldn't defer their trip. So there were moments where I missed school, but it was often for very exceptional circumstances, exceptional sometimes on the positive and affirmative side, and sometimes on the sadder, kind of more personal level. And I'm very thankful that they prioritized me having as kind of normal a life as possible, while also ensuring that I felt connected to their work and included in their work in whatever age appropriate ways that could be done.
Can you talk a little bit about your grandmothers, Grandma Ginger, Grandma Dorothy, who had such an indelible impact on the woman you've become?
Oh my gosh, thank you. I mean, I think about my grandmothers all the time. My Grandma Ginger, my dad's mom, I did not have the blessing of knowing as an adult. She passed away when I was 13, about 6 weeks before my 14th birthday. She was such a colorful character and always up for kind of feeding my curiosity and going on adventures together, and yet so rooted in the importance and the imperative of being kind and being kind of as generous as anyone could ever be. And I am so thankful all the time I spent with her and just wish that I could have had more time with her. And then my Grandma Dorothy, I was so lucky, so blessed to know for the first 31 and a half years of my life. And she played a huge role in my life. I mean, I still think, what would Grandma Dorothy think about this question? Or what would she recommend? Or what questions would she be asking about this question or this, opportunity? And, both of my grandmothers practiced, what one of them called like the ministry of showing up. Like they just always showed up. They always were there, not only for me and for my parents and my uncles, but also, for their friends, for their communities. And so just such examples of a life full of love and purpose, and also very much rooted in their own ways of service, at a more local level with their local community organizations, with their churches, with my Grandma Dorothy, her local Girl Scout troops, but still very much to whom much is given, much is expected, and kind of what that may mean over time may shift, but that call is always there. So I am so thankful for them in my lives. I think about them all the time and miss them every day.
with your grandma Dorothy. I mean, she was a self-made woman, and to think that, the rights of suffrage for women, she was there when that was granted and then got a chance to vote for her daughter.
Yet also that you can never take anything for granted. I think partly because she and my grandma Ginger were such kind of self-made people, certainly had a respect for hard work, but also didn't think it should be as hard, and always had a real appreciation for the need to invest in more kind of rights and opportunities for people who historically have been excluded, certainly including, but not only women.
So the second segment is service. And in She Persisted, you share the story of Lima Gabowi, who is a trauma counselor during the Civil War in Liberia. And she said, the more I did, the more I could do, the more I wanted to do, the more I saw needed to be done. And I feel like that really captures what service is about. And your parents have dedicated their lives to service. And now you're doing the same. I feel like you're truly building up this next generation to understand what it means. I have some of your books here. My kids are just learning to read, and I cannot wait till they read It's Your World and start now, because it's really galvanizing the youth in what they have the power to do. I want to just talk about how we are living in this, what feels like a dystopian society with this ongoing pandemic. We've seen the worst: racism, gun violence, police brutality, female rights being rescinded, lack of universal childcare, corruption, climate crisis, the list goes on. But you stay optimistic. How do you do that?
I think about something a lot that Jim Kim, who was one of the founders of Partners in Health, then was the president of the World Bank, so very much had dedicated a huge portion of his life to trying to bring healthcare, good healthcare, healthcare with dignity, to places that historically had had very few, if any, healthcare services, healthcare workers, healthcare options or opportunities. I'll just never forget, years ago, I heard him say that optimism is a moral choice. And I think that's right. I think that cynicism is kind of the reservoir of people who not only don't think things can change, but also people who like the status quo, or who maybe even, as you were just saying, like want to pull us backward, aren't only not interested in progress, but are interested in regression. And that's not what I'm interested in. That's not the world that I want to live in, or that I want my kids or your kids to grow up in. And so I do think optimism is a moral choice. I choose to believe that my energies and time, resources, and dreams, if invested in, directed in, purposed alongside, other people who also believe that a more just and equitable and sustainable and healthier world is possible, that hopefully we can get closer to that in terms of what our legal rights are, as well as what our opportunities are, as well as what hopefully we are protected against kind of would be. And so, for me, it's both not wanting to be cynical and also just believing that hopefully some portion of kind of all that I try to do on any given day will matter. And hopefully, we'll make even just a small contribution to better worlds for our kids.
Yes, absolutely. And what inspires you to write for our children?
Our kids, first and foremost, every time I think about it, and certainly was surprising when I was living it, but I was so struck when I was the parent of, not only a daughter and then also my son, and they were both quite small, how many of the children's books were oriented around male voices or male names. I mean, even like the ducks and the chickens and the cows and the frogs, would be named George or Harry. And that's lovely for George and Harry, but there were so few stories centered on like the narratives of girls and women. And so that's partly why it's been so important to me to focus on this She Persisted series. And then for like It's Your World or Start Now, or the other work to try to inform and help empower the next generation, including, even young kids, is really driven by the questions that I've heard kids ask, sometimes me, sometimes other authors or teachers. And I think that those questions deserve answers. kids who want to change something also deserve to hear stories of other kids who've already changed things and already tackled challenges in their community or on larger stages, so that hopefully they can imagine themselves doing the same or doing something similar. And so, everything I do now is so inspired by my kids, across like every facet of my life, including as a writer, because ultimately, like, the most important role I have is as a mom.
Absolutely. Well, in your latest book, Welcome to the Big Kids Club, and in Spanish, it's Bienvenidos al Club de los Niños Grandes. You are writing to kids who are graduating to becoming a big brother or a big sister to their baby on the way. And you share concepts with them on how to hold the baby, what's a soft spot, why do they poop so much? It's really fun and whimsical. Can you break down how you came up with these concepts? And are these what you taught your two older kids before Jasper came along?
Yes. So this was very much inspired by the questions that Charlotte and Aiden were asking, because Charlotte and Aiden are only 20 months apart. So Charlotte was not really asking questions when her baby brother was born. But then there's more than 3 years between Aiden and Jasper. And so, Charlotte and Aiden were just so curious about like what this new baby was going to be. And she also very much, even more than her brother, like very much had a proprietary take on the baby before Jasper was even born. And so the Welcome to the Big Kids Club book was really like the product of all these conversations I had with our kids around what we thought might happen, but also, the babies develop in different ways. And so what we thought may happen may not happen in the same way, or what had been true for the two of them, may or may not be true for their new baby, because we didn't know if Jasper was going to be a boy or a girl. All of those conversations just compelled me to write this book. And because I thought, well, if we're having these conversations, I imagine similar conversations are happening in other families too.
And now moving on to legacy, I feel like we can't even think of legacy until we think of our village. And I remember reading It Takes a Village with my mom when I was a teen. And of course, I didn't fully understand what parenthood entailed. But now that I have 3, it couldn't ring more true what, your mother was trying to capture for all of us. My mom has been diagnosed with aphasia and it's early onset dementia. And just to see that evolution as a mom myself in the sandwich generation, it's very difficult. So we need our village more than anything. And I want to just share a quote that your mother had written. Parenthood has the power to redefine every aspect of life, marriage, work, relationships with family and friends. Those helpless bundles of power and promise that come into our world show us our true selves, who we are not, who we wish we could be. We are living in an interdependent world where what our children hear, see, feel, and learn will affect how they grow up and who they turn out to be. So it's all a cycle. So tell us about what your parenthood experience was like and who that village is for you.
Well, I am happy that you have a village around you. And I am certainly happy that we have a village around us. Yeah. And, our village is thankfully, wide and deep, with our families, both my husband's family and my family, our friends, our kids' amazing teachers, really wonderful caregiver, and everyone who helps us, on any given day or week or month or year. And certainly I have to give a massive shout out to our pediatric practice and everyone who works there, from the pediatricians to the nurses to the front office staff, who have just been amazing over the last 2.5 years of COVID and all of the questions that I know so many parents have had. And so really have to just acknowledge them as a big part of our village too. So thankful for everyone who's in our village. And also will say, I had no idea the gift that my children would give me of seeing my parents as grandparents. I have thankfully a quite good memory, but don't remember being a baby, certainly. And so seeing how much love and care and attention and attentiveness that my parents have always had toward our children, from the moment they met in the hospital, has just been such a gift. And so seeing them, read together and play together and be able to do that in different seasons and in different places and spaces has been magical for me. Also, as someone who had such a close relationship with my grandmothers, to watch that relationship develop between my children and their grandparents also has been particularly meaningful. And so while, again, we are very thankful to have a wide and deep village with, so much family and so many friends and everyone else who cares for, nurtures, teaches, educates, helps protect our kids, particularly thankful for my parents as grandparents.
What was like your biggest learning as a parent?
My husband took a little bit too much of the listen to your instincts as the only advice to heed, because there is a right way to put a diaper on or swaddle a child. There are some things that you just need to learn from the nurses in the hospital or your pediatric practice or your sister who has lots of children. Thankfully, again, because we've had such a robust village and I've had such wonderful advice and community, I think thankfully that helped preempt a lot of the challenges that otherwise, we would have had, or that people who don't have. I mean, my husband's one of 11. And he's the 10th of 11. So many of his sisters and brothers, had already had children, many children, many different stages of life. And thankfully, my parents have been really engaged and involved. But I do think kind of the funny learning was when Charlotte was very little and he was like, why can't I figure this out? And I'm like, because you need someone to teach you.
Right. Okay, a quick rapid fire round. I'm going to start with questions that my kids posed for you. My daughter, so every birthday she gets gifts. She donates half of them to kids' charities that we belong to. Is there any other way that she can help, share and help those less fortunate in our community? She wants to know.
I don't know enough about kind of where you live, but certainly, in New York City, there are ways for even relatively young kids to get involved with food repacking and food donations, not only around, Thanksgiving or the holidays when a lot of people may be engaged in that work, but also, in the spring or the summer or the autumn. And you don't have to be, too big or too strong to be able to sort out potatoes or apples and bag them to be able to then have them picked up by families who otherwise you wouldn't be able to access fresh fruit and vegetables. So that's, I think, one way that she could help if that is an option.
That's so great. And it's something that we should do year round, of course. My son, who's a dinosaur aficionado in the home, he wants to know who would win, T-Rex or Parasaurolophus in a duel.
It's probably Parasaurolophus, but as someone who loved T-Rexes as a kid, I have to go with T-Rex.
Yes.
Back to the OG dinosaur.
Yeah. And how do you recycle with your kids? My other twins, my boy-girl twins, and then my younger one. So my one twin said, he loves recycling. Do you do that with your kids? Compost, that sort of thing?
We recycle very diligently. I have found it's a really wonderful way for our kids to be engaged. They understand that we opt into renewable energy or that we use energy safe light bulbs, but they can't help fill out the forms really, or change the light bulbs or have the more energy efficient glass on our windows. But they can help break down the cardboard boxes and put them in the right bin and put the wash out the yogurt containers and put those in the right bin. And so, yes, they are very involved with that.
That's awesome. Is there a book that changed your life?
50 Simple Things Kids Can Do to Save the World. Absolutely. I read it when I was, 10 or 11. It was just full of such practical ways for kids to change the world. And I then thought, oh, I can do this. And I did some of it, not all of it, but a lot of it.
Is there a song that you love to listen to on repeat?
We listen to a lot of Raffi, admittedly, because our 3-year-old Jasper is deep into Baby Beluga and Down by the Bay. And all of that makes him so happy. Also, our 2 older kids are really into Kids Learning Tube. Mm-hmm. So we listen to lots of those albums as well. We particularly like the Planets and the Dwarf Planet ones.
Do you have an heirloom or a lucky charm that you hold dear?
Don't have an heirloom or lucky charm, but my children gave me this necklace, which I can pull out and show you, that has 3 tiny little things on it for each one of them that they picked out and gave to me for Christmas a couple of years ago. And I wear that every day.
And mom sense moment, a moment where you trust that built-in sixth sense that, mom sense, dad sense, grandma sense, we all have it, where you just felt like I know what to do in this situation and it's not going to steer me wrong.
Yes. Well, all of my children have had moments of like not maybe making the right choices with their ability to balance on things or thinking they maybe should climb on things that they shouldn't climb on. And I'm very thankful that I seem to have what my husband calls a spidey sense of to like either ideally prevent that from happening or certainly catch them before they go tumbling off. And so, yes, Mark calls that my spidey sense.
I love that. And where can my audience find you and all your books?
Gosh, well, in your local bookstores, thankfully. I mean, in your local bookstores or online, certainly at like Barnes & Noble or Amazon, but hopefully in your local bookstores. And we will be sharing more about the upcoming book events for Welcome to the Big Kids Club soon.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your light with the world. Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy that your kids enjoy some of the books and hopefully will enjoy others as they get older. And then it's time for them to read those.
Yes, exactly. This is just, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Every day they will have a book by you to read, which is amazing.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone in the background who brought us together and made this possible.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is @Kanika Chadda Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.